people. So I was just having a talk with some of the Italians just in the morning today, and asked them what is it. So they said that the business they see Europe is more or less, in they are, it's literally like a World War III which has happened, and it's going to take time, but they want to get back to business soon, and they are going to be looking at completely new markets and so on and so forth. And so is a country like France. So we have various opportunities there in terms of going and doing some exploration with the French companies, etc. New products and new technologies, as well as look at new customers. So there are a lot of these sort of opportunities which are going to be there. Now, if you have a look at some of the news items that has been appearing in the newspapers, if you see, it's about foreign firms wanting to now come into India, which means that if they do come, there is going to be a very, very huge requirement of a lot of OEMs and so on and so forth, depending upon what are the companies. These are the companies that want to come into India. Also, a lot of people that I spoke to seem very bullish about the Indian economy. And, there are the naysayers who are going to be saying, oh, we are going to go into a deep recession. But I think overall, looking at the various other indicators, I don't think we are going to go, that badly or do that badly, because I think all of us are very, very optimistic, and we are a growing nation. And interestingly, Nitin Gadkari the other day, there was a news item, and he said that he was going to be, asking for increasing import duties on Chinese items. And he gave an example. He said the moment the duty on ice cream was increased, India started producing the ice cream spoons here in India. Otherwise, we were importing them from China. So this is what he wants to do, and he sort of wants Indians to stop depending a lot on China and so on and so forth. But that apart, so these are some of the areas in which there is going to be a lot of opportunities. And there was one of the advisory firms that had sort of indicated that these are the various sectors that are going to be doing very well. Of course, as you can see, pharma, healthcare, diagnostics, consumer goods and durables. Normally, after any war, suddenly there is a huge, wave of consumerism. And it almost seems that, there will be a certain kind of a huge volcano after this pent up demand, for 2 months that we have undergone for, consumer goods and durables. Forget about, your essentials and all that, that will carry on. But a lot of consumer goods and durables will definitely find, agrochem, telecom, insurance is going to be another, big area, education, agriculture, e-commerce, etc. So as you can see, there are these sectors which are going to be performing well, and a little time which will be taken would be by tourism, hospitality, luxury goods. Yes, luxury goods. At the moment, the sentiment is going to be, not to spend. Restaurants, of course, are understanding the compulsions of all the parameters that the government has laid down, BPOs, auto and real estate. Now, there are some sectors which doesn't really affect, like, for example, education and so on and so forth, that will carry on. So coming to my next slide is now considering that there are this, a great amount of opportunity which is going to arise after COVID-19. And I would say that still we have not been able to pinpoint and place a finger at this is how it is going to be, because almost every day various things are, globally there are various trends which are changing. And one really doesn't, really know how, what is going to happen. It's suddenly, China has been now challenged. And if you read, there was, I think Minneapolis from US has filed a suit against China for, and so on and so forth. And there seems to be this sort of an emotional, pent up hatred towards China for what it did and so on and so forth. And there is going to be challenging there. hegemony and whatnot. Anyway, coming to what, about what can we do is look at our own companies, our own products, our own services, and look at these 4 pointers which I have. One is which is developing your marketing plan. Of course, I'm sure all of you all will be familiar with your product, your pricing, promotion, distribution, but I will be talking about the promotion part of it more in detail. Identifying your unique value proposition, which is going to be very, very important. Company, product, brand image. That also I will be elaborating and of course communicating with the customers. So these are the most important things that any of, if you all are into doing, business, if you are business people and if you are marketing oriented, you must think about it. It gives you a certain kind of an idea of where to go and what to do. And I always recommend, if you have an existing product and there is an existing market, are you going to say, okay, I'm happy? Now, if you see the first quadrant, the purple quadrant, which says market penetration, it simply means that you are going to make your existing customer to use more. How do you do that? Well, that is again, that's where marketing comes in, is where you are going to perhaps, create a certain variant. Now, that's what everybody does. It's like, if I have to give you a very simple example, it's like Colgate. They will come up with a toothpaste, let's say this toothpaste is daytime, and they will say, okay, I've come up with a nighttime toothpaste. So we are going to buy 2 toothpastes instead of 1. So that is a very simple example of market penetration. So what you'll do is, if there is a existing product, you'll create a variant and you'll penetrate the market. Then coming to the next quadrant, which is product development, which is new products. That, of course, is, they're very interesting ways of how you're doing it. And I will give you an example, which will be of great interest to you later on. It's about, how companies make a change in the name of your product and they call it a new product. Now, you will say that this is a marketing gimmick, but it works because all of us, we consume those products regularly. So I wouldn't really say, but that's what is called smart marketing. Coming to the third quadrant, which is market development, is where you are going to be looking at new markets completely, where you have never been. So it's like, let's say, looking at a market globally, overseas. You look at places like Africa, look at places like, let's say now, everybody is sort of, turn their antennas towards Africa, and those countries which are, let's say, democratically elected countries, and where they are growing. For example, you have Ethiopia and so on and so forth. So they could be, and not necessarily that a market only has to be in Europe. I mean, you have the entire world to look at. But spotting where is the need and identifying that need. And of course, coming to the fourth quadrant is about diversification, which is, of course, I wouldn't advise any medium-sized company, small and medium-sized company right now, until and unless they've grown sufficiently in their, in their business in order then to diversify. So these are very simple, strategies which one can apply. And I'll give you a very interesting story. Now I'm coming to the branding part of it, and I'm sure this story will interest you. It's about Intel and what Intel did and how it became this company that it was. See, if we have to look at, this was in the 1980s when, computers were just coming on, and we were all wondering as to what computers were, and sort of just gradually sort of testing the waters. And we had no clue as to what a microchip was and so on and so forth. It's an unknown part of a computer. Now, it's normally you look at this as a commodity product. And my recommendation for those OEMs who, if there are in our audience today, is to look at this particular strategy, because it typically in hardcore branding, this is called ingredient branding. So what they typically did was to take this microchip. Now Intel had a competitor called IMD, and both of them were sort of trying to grab market share and wondering how to outdo each other. Now, IMD was quite in terms of quality, it was a better product than Intel. But now Intel was very, very ambitious, and they said that no, we have to take, seize this opportunity, and we have to grow our market share. And how do we do it? And change the consumers, end users' mindset, and the manufacturers who are buying them. That is the B2B customer, change their mindset, and the B2C customer as well. Now that's the most interesting part of it. How did they become such a well-known brand? Now, as the story goes, it's very interesting, is they launched a cooperative ingredient branding program along with their with the manufacturers. There was Dell, and then there was IBM, and there was Compaq, and so on and so forth. So they did a tie-up with them and said that we will, give you some, we will share your advertising expenses, and all that you will have to do is to create this little sticker called Intel Inside and paste it on your microprocessor, on the box which holds the microprocessor, and so on and so forth. And whatever advertising that you do, you just add this little logo which says Intel Inside. So that's what they did. How many of us are familiar with Intel Inside? All of us are. Do we really know what is Intel Inside? I didn't know, but I was very familiar with that logo. And this is exactly what Intel wanted to do, is they wanted to increase the value of the end product. So suddenly end users like you and me, we were absolutely taken aback by this Intel Inside, and we thought that it was something very, very, something which was very extremely important, which had to appear on that box. And it was a win-win strategy, win-win situation for both the end manufacturers like Compaq and IBM particularly. It was IBM in those days mostly. And of course, in India, they were used to be the assembled computers. What happened was that Intel Inside started adding value to the end product. And Intel Inside became very, very well known. Now, look at the amount of investment that they have made. They have not done any big advertising campaign, or they didn't do some, very huge, they didn't invest huge amounts of money at all. It was a very simple strategy of making this sticker and putting it on those boxes on the computers, and partaking that and saying, okay, we will share a little bit of your advertising budget as well. And the end result was that Intel Inside became a very, very well-known brand. Today, let's say if you see the valuation of the Intel company, the Intel Inside brand is humongous. And when we say the valuation, that is of the brand, I'm not saying about the company. Branding valuation is a little different from the company valuation. So the Intel Inside brand has a tremendous amount of what you call goodwill. It has equity, etc. So this gives a very good example of how you take a commodity and you turn it into a brand, add value to it, build value to it, and you became a very, very well-known product. So if you see here, what is the benefit of branding here? And in this case, it was a very strong competitive differentiation. The value of the end product increased, Intel Inside today, if they have to sell just that, Intel Inside property, it will be huge amounts of money. Of course, customer loyalty, public awareness, creating end user demand. These are all the benefits which happened. And imagine that within the first year of that Intel Inside campaign, their sales rose to about 63%. And then, of course, it was listed as the 6th most valuable brand, etc., etc. So I gave you this example simply because here was a company that was growing. It was not a big company. It was a small company, and it was very ambitious. And they didn't have the kind of huge amounts of money that others had in order to spend on advertising and so on and so forth. And how do you go about branding? Now, very often there is a misconception that branding is only done by B2C or consumer durables. Forget about it. Today, every company looks at branding as a key tool, which is it's not even a tool, it is a weapon that you have to have in your arsenal if you are a marketeer. And that's where I will now come directly to the topic of branding. And, we can begin with some very basics, which I'd like to show you. Now, if you have a look at the picture that I'm showing you here, there are two shirts, and one is Color Plus and the other one is called Craze. Now, both these shirts have been made in the same manufacturing unit by the same people. There is no difference except that one carries the label called Color Plus and one carries the label called Craze. Both the companies that owns these, Craze does even better because they do a lot of exporting to other countries, and of course Color Plus is consumed. Now, when we look at these two shirts, any person will choose Color Plus, right? Why is that so? Now, we will not look at too much into the quality and so on and so forth. We just look at that brand Color Plus and say everything else is taken for granted. But Craze, when you look at it, you're going to look at whether the quality is good, whether this is good, that is good, not realizing that both have emerged from the same machines, from the same manufacturing line. Everything has been the same except one is branded and one hasn't. Now, what is the difference here? Both have names. One is Color Plus, one is Craze. Color Plus has invested in communications, communicating, and they have a brand strategy. Now, when you talk about branding, it's more about communications than anything else. And Craze has not done any communications. It has not bothered at all. It says, I'm doing very well. I don't need all this. I don't need so on and so forth. So the point that I wanted to make here is that today brands are very, very important. We will choose a branded product over an unbranded one. And this is not necessarily only for B2C, consumer durables or consumer goods. It is across even B2B. So I'll come to the B2B part of it very soon. Now, if you have a look at this slide, you will see that these are some recent changes that has happened, particularly with Wipro and with Mahindra. And if you're familiar, Wipro had that particular logo, which was the sunflower. And I think it was 2 years, 2019, early 19, late 2018, that they changed to the new logo, which is Wipro. Now, why are they changing the logo? What does the logo mean? Now, branding does not mean having a logo only. Branding goes far beyond. The logo is just what you call the visual identity, which I'll come to later. But if you see, you see Wipro, see Mahindra. Mahindra's old logo, it's a little tiny there, but you just have to sort of have a look at it. And you have the new logo of Mahindra. Apple, look at the amount of changes that Apple has had. From being that original one where it had that apple falling and so on and so forth, then to the rainbow colors and so on and so forth. To today, it's just it's just a single color. All of them have had changes, and more importantly is they have been small companies at one point of time. And as they grew, they felt the need of continuously changing their logo. Now, we have the benefit of knowing branding today, and I don't think any of us should wait for that time to come where we suddenly, feel the need, oh, we need to do branding and so on and so forth. And I have come across many such companies, particularly when they want to go international, suddenly become aware that something is wrong with, we need to do some branding and all that. Well, branding doesn't mean just having a logo, it means a whole lot of other things as well. Uh, so if you look at, Mahindra, then there's that very interesting picture of the Starbucks, what it was, and within a very short span of time, they removed the word Starbucks. They just had that symbol of that particular mermaid. Facebook, now they have unified Facebook. So you see, you have Facebook appearing even when you open WhatsApp and so on and so forth. HP, look at the way HP has also changed. So these have also been very, very big companies that have undergone, taken these changes. Why do they do that? I mean, is there something wrong with the existing logo? No, it is simply that they have to continuously build image depending upon their, keeping up with the trends and the marketplace and the changes in the environment. And if you see Titan, now this is the watch company. Earlier on, they had that red colored logo, and suddenly they changed to that diamond shape. And it says from style statement to a personality statement. And they felt the need of doing that change simply because they moved from making watches and all into various other accessories. They went into perfumes and so on and so forth. So at every point of time, they make these changes depending upon what are the kind of products, diversifications, innovations that they're doing. And this is all a sign of growing. And, we have to be ready with our brand, with our, with our brand strategy, not when we are, let's say, 10 years old or 12 years old, but do it right away. And now is a perfect time because we have time. Now, have a look at this slide, and if you see these, I'm sure you will say, oh God, how terrible. I mean, do these companies inspire any confidence in you all? I mean, you will wonder, aesthetically also, they don't look good. Plus, they're not inspiring anything. They're not saying anything. Now, and now you look at this. Immediately, and I've taken examples of Indian companies here, strong leaders, and they have something very, very, credible about them. Now they have reached to that area because they underwent all this, change and all that kind of a thing. And I feel that we don't have to undergo all that, continuous, being in the unknown as far as branding is concerned, but you straight away adopt the branding strategy right now when it is, when companies are just about growing, or if anywhere even mid-sized and mid-aged. All right. Now, one very basic fundamental question which you will be wondering is, corporate branding versus product branding. Now, what is corporate branding means? It's when a company brands itself. So, you have Tata. So Tata has created a brand for itself as a company. But when you look at the products, then you have products like this, if you see the examples I have given you here, these Tata Tiscon, Tata Steelium are all products from Tata Steel. Another example you'll see is the Infosys Finacle. Infosys is the corporate brand. So you see the way there, the word mark or the way Infosys is written, and then Finacle is the product that they have. So even the product is branded. And so you have a company brand as well as you have a product brand. And coming down to the Kirloskars, the gensets, where they have branded it as Chota Chili and Green. Now, very often, in B2B, these sort of small things are ignored. Your product must be branded. They must have a solid name because it inspires tremendous amount of confidence. when you look at when a customer looks at it, and also it helps in your internal processes and systems as well. And to the outside world, it is a company that knows, is very global, is very confident about themselves. It gives a completely different kind of an image. Now, if you look at the Tata Green batteries, that is a product from Tata Autocom. So they also make batteries. So if you see here, this is the kind of this is their product, which has a very definite identity for itself. So when you all are also looking at your line of products, you want to give it a company name, or you want to give it a different name, it is entirely left to you, but you must have an identity even for your products visually. So coming to the next slide, this is something which you can, since I'll be sharing the slides with you, read at your leisure. But these are the benefits of, how branding helps, and how it works out in the long run to be a big asset. And when I talk about asset, it is a monetary asset. So in every aspect, whether it is for your salespeople, whether it is for internal, which is your HR, whether it is for your marketing team, for the government, media, for anybody, any stakeholder, if you are branded, it means that there is a great sense of comfort and credibility. And when I say comfort, it is a comfort of having an interaction. And therefore, branding is, highly recommended. Now, I'll just do a small little deep dive into the, what is required. And then, maybe at your leisure, you all can go through this. And if you have any, questions, you can always, but I think it's very important for you all to know about this as entrepreneurs and owners of business, or as marketeers. So you have these 4 key elements, which in my next slide, I'll show you. See, at the center of it is what is called the core of your brand. So if it is a company brand, it says about what is your company all about? How are you different from the others? So you identify your company, your core values, and what I call the unique value proposition that you're going to be giving. I'll get to the nitty-gritties of this in my next slide. Then you have what is called the visual identity, which is where your logo comes in. So, what are the colors of the logo going to be? How is the typography going to be? How, and so on and so forth, which is one aspect of it, which somehow or the other, everybody feels that, oh, if I do a logo, which means I'm a brand. No, that's just the visual part of it. So visual is what we see, very important. Therefore, it's very important. But here it means your logo, your packaging, whether it is, right from, if it is a small little drill machine, or it could be maybe some other product, the packaging for it, your websites, then the signages that you have outside your office or your factories, then your environment design, and various other communication design. So that is, and whatever you see visually of the company is known as visual branding. And then of course we come to the third part of it, which is your company. How does your company speak? It means, what is the name, brand name? Today brand names have become very important. Of course, a company that has the name Kirloskar, which was of a person, now they suddenly can't decide to change it. But if somebody is starting off with business right now, you must check out whether it makes sense to have a family name to the business. Having a family name for, let's say, your legal and all, to do with your legal speak and all that is fine. But the name that comes to your, in front of your customers, to front of your stakeholders, has to be a proper brand name. I'll be talking about brand names a little later. Then of course you have what is called the descriptor, which comes under the brand name, the tagline, and how does the brand talk? And that is, so this is what is called the verbal articulation of branding. And the experiential is about how you are designing the experience for the customer. So here comes in things like, when I go into an office, what is my first impression of when I go and sit in the lobby? Is the lobby crowded? Is it welcoming? Is it warm? Is it a happy place? Many years ago, that's when I think I must have started my career. I remember going into one of the offices. It was somewhere in the early 90s. And it used to be, when you entered the office, there used to be the receptionist, and then you used to sit on the sofa, and next to the sofa, there used to be one, what you call, flower vase, and then there used to be the telephone directories, thick ones. And this was, I'm talking about the mobile phone days. And there used to be a receptionist who used to sit and ask you, yes, whom do you want to meet, etc., etc. And you looked around and you saw some photographs. That was it. Today, these lobbies have become a center. I wouldn't say an experience center, but a place where you imbibe the entire company's philosophy, because you're going to be spending time there. So it should not be something which is just functional. Well, that also doesn't mean that you have to pour in money to make it fancy. No. But it has to convey a certain identity. It has to convey a certain uniqueness, so on and so forth. Factory tour. Now, this is very interesting because, one of my cousins, he just, I think 2 years back, he retired from Tata Motors. And his job was to take customers and various other people on a tour of the factory. And believe it or not, he told me, he says, most of the sales finalization used to happen during the factory tour because he had such an insight into the company. So he would talk to them, he would tell them about the history, about everything, show them around. So when the show round went about, the buyer used to be convinced, and he used to be 99% convinced that he has to buy it there. And that's why the factory tour becomes very, very important. And this is where I say, it might be a small place also, but your factory you should be able to be proud of it and take people around. I mean, I know that, when you go into factories, they're not really very happening places, but there are companies that are changing that entire factory as an experience. That's what Cadbury's did. To give you an example, they decided that they needed to seed the demand of chocolates in children. So they tied up with schools and said, please bring your children to our factory. Let them see how chocolates are made. And what happens? You remain with that experience throughout your life. And, you prefer to buy Cadbury chocolates. So this is where an experience of a factory tour becomes very important. Experience centers, I'm sure you all have heard of. This is the new trend nowadays. Every company, so to speak, does have an experience center, but I'll come to all that later. Then you have, of course, the customer service, your tech support, how your receptionist is, not the receptionist, but whoever is taking calls, how is she speaking, and so on and so forth. So this is the experiential dimension of your brand. Now, coming to the first one, which is positioning, you're going to be wondering as to how do I position my company? Now, typically, one looks at what your USPs are. And if you see some of these well-known companies, they take some high values of an higher order. Let's say if GE says imagination at work. So they decided that their products are going to stimulate imagination and innovation, or 3M says science applied to life. Now, these taglines give an indication as to what is the company communicating or what is the positioning. Now, sometimes I advise companies, medium-sized companies, so on and so forth, that you take any of these, you take R&D, you take innovation, you take your technology, you take yourself as a solutions provider, take leadership, any of these sort of things, and do not hesitate about positioning yourselves in that way. And it makes a world of a difference to the image of the company, to the what you call confidence of the employees who are working there, etc. Now, Polycab says India's #1 cable and wires company. Does anybody go and really check out whether they are the India's #1? Well, no. But here is a statement of such confidence. So this is where how is it that you're going to position yourself becomes very important. And even though you might be a medium-sized company, it doesn't matter. You can surely say with confidence what you are. And that's where positioning becomes very, very important. Now, a visual identity is coming is where, you have a look at the logo. It should look good. It should look modern. It should look strong, etc., etc. And this is a job which is done by graphic designers. This is not the priority. This comes second, but it is very important because that is what people are going to be seeing. And therefore, if you see, that is the reason why a lot of the companies spend great amount of money changing their logos, because somewhere they have made change. And all of them, these are, again, a lot of them are Indian companies except for Cummins, but of course Cummins is located here in Pune and so on and so forth. But see the way they have developed their, the font, the typography, strong. It's suddenly you won't find a huge symbol and a small name. Very, very important. If you see Tata's, the symbol on top, the T and the word mark, which is Tata's, are relative to each other. Not the symbol doesn't take away the strength of the name. And with medium-sized companies, please remember that your name should be very strong. Forget about the symbol. Symbol comes in much later. I mean, we have to reach a Nike and Starbucks level to do away with the name. But as medium-sized companies, when we are in competition, it is very important that you should have your name very, very prominent. All right. Now, coming to the other part of it, which is your visual articulation. What are the things that you need to take care of? It is things like your website, signage, marketing material, presentations, display boards, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into details. I have a lot to talk, and I find that there is just 15 minutes. So I'm, this is something that you can probably have a look at. You can have a look at the slide. Now, the next thing which I want to talk to you about, very importantly, is the. This is very, very interesting. It's about the company name. And I want to bring your attention to this story about the kiwi fruit. Now, sometimes it becomes very, very necessary to change the name of your product. And you'll say, oh my God, everybody knows it and so on and so forth. But there could be a change in the destiny, in the fortune of that product. And, there's an excellent example of kiwi fruit. Now, this fruit was originally called Chinese gooseberry in New Zealand. And when they wanted to export it into the US, the importers there said that the name is terrible because nobody, seems to have warmed up to the name, as well as, there were some high tariffs on gooseberries. So what did they do? They decided to change the name, and they decided to change the name to kiwi. Now, kiwi, if you know, is a furry animal, which is a specialty of New Zealand. And suddenly the name kiwi fruit becomes exotic. And then the demand for fruit, that kiwi fruit took off once they changed the name. So here you have what is called being very smart, being a marketeer, where you completely change the name of the product. And from Chinese gooseberry, they changed it into kiwi fruit. And a similar example is what is known as the Chilean sea bass. Now, it is called the Patagonian toothfish. And of course, we don't know about this, but I'm just giving you an example. It is a very, very premium product. People pay huge amounts of money to eat it. Imagine eating a Patagonian toothfish. Even the name is so repulsive. But when you say a Chilean sea bass, sounds better, sounds good, sounds exotic. Well, So my example here is just by changing the name of your product, you can create a new category altogether. Another example I'd like to give you is, here is where our marketing strategy comes is, if you take milk powder. Now there is a new segment which is called dairy whitener. Now, what is dairy whitener? At a basic level, it is again milk, dried, sprayed, whatever, milk powder. But you have a new segment which is dairy whitener, and suddenly, you have dairy whiteners which have come in. Then somebody else renames it and calls it, no, I'm not a whitener, but I am a tea maker, etc., etc. So here, if you are clever enough, to understand, the marketing, the need of the customer, you can just change the name of your product, not necessarily call it by its function, but you can call it by a solution that it is rendering. It gives me an example of what DeWalt's CEO once said. He said that he doesn't make drills. What does he make? He says, I give my customers perfect holes. And, that's what he said. He says, my products are not about making drills, but it is about making perfect quarter-inch holes. So it's about, where you can completely change the entire, fortune, or rather the destiny of your product. And very, very simple example in this, why I'm telling you, because this is what I had recommended to a person who had come and met me. They were into the business of groundnut trading, and they said that, okay, we want to make chicky and all. So he says, will chicky be eaten? There are so many players and all. I said, all that you need to do is to rename the chicky. Why don't you call it something like now you see, now looking at consumption in India, in the urban areas, when you look at customers, they want something which is lifestyle oriented. So why don't you call it an, energy bar? And there you go. So you make a complete change and you call it an energy bar. And, if you eat products, if you've seen those energy bars that you get in some of the supermarkets, they're nothing but chicky at a basic level. So this is where you just sort of change the name and you call it by another name, and you are almost giving it a new, completely creating a new category. And this is a very successful strategy which has been adopted in many other, largely a lot of big companies, they do this. Okay, now coming to, you'll see the logos that I've shown you there of the banks is where your tagline. So if you have a name, then you must have a tagline, and, your tagline must it must sort of communicate your position. In the first element which I talked about was positioning. So here you say, Bank of Baroda says India's international bank. So clearly, please don't go into anything which is esoteric and talk about something which is all very, very, of a higher value. No, be very, very functional in that aspect, because we are introducing, or we are entering into a market with a brand name, etc., etc. And what happens is that we see all these other companies and their successes, like Nike. Everybody has Nike in their minds, and Nike said, "Just do it." We cannot use a line like, say, "Just do it." Even a shoe company in India which is starting off will not be able to say, "Just do it," or do something like that, because Nike has grown to that position, branding wise also, and they are in a position to use that. So I would recommend not to go in for something which is esoteric like that, but keep it very functional and simple. And now coming to the next part of it, this is what I was talking to you about, what was the experience center. Now this is the experience center of Accenture. Now you'd wonder, why does a company like Accenture need experience center? But this is what it is. And this is about giving their entire customers, etc., etc. We don't have to be that big, spend so much of money being glamorous or anything like that, but have a certain amount of uniqueness in, if you feel the need, if you are into B2C, and in certain cases, if B2B also, where you need to display your products, make sure that at least, the display is done in a very, very effective, and it should give, the first impression should be wow. And for that wow, I am sure you don't have to spend huge amounts of money, because there is a misconception that, oh, branding requires a lot of money and all. Just forget about that thought. No, it is not. It's not something which is expensive. It's just about thinking smartly, thinking differently. So coming to this was the experience, and have time. Okay, another 10 minutes, and I'll quickly take you through the branding and marketing communication part of it, and then later on, I think y'all can, see the slides. I won't go to it in much detail. See now, how do you communicate your brand? So I've given you a very nice example here of what all you need to do. Do up your website well, advertise in trade magazines, do a lot of digital marketing. As a matter of fact, I hope all of you all are spending time being on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn during this period. And you'll wonder, why am I saying Instagram? Believe me, Instagram works very well. The company that I'm consulting, they are into, advising. It's an advisory firm, purely B2B. But the kind of response we get from Instagram is amazing. And it's a misnomer that Instagram should be only meant for, brands which are visually, no. Instagram is very, very powerful. So be on Instagram, but very important is, what is the content that you push out on all these digital platforms? That requires a strategy. So your digital marketing, then you have your marketing material like your brochures or whatever, exhibition, participating in exhibition and trade shows, packaging, public relations, networking, road shows, etc. So this is about, getting ready and doing all these things, whether you're going to be here or if you are planning to go overseas. And overseas, and when I say overseas, it doesn't mean only US or let's say Europe, but any part of the world where you need to have a very strong brand. And when I say brand, it doesn't mean that you have to be a leader, but you have to look very, very confident. You have to appear very, very confident. And that comes about when you are, when you are personally, as an entrepreneur, convinced about the power of marketing and, branding. So this is what I call internationalization and localization, which one needs to do. Internationalization is what you need to do is when you get into markets, and localization is that, let's say you are going to be doing business with France. You have to understand that French people might come to your website and he may not understand what you have written there. So for a website, always have a translation done in French language. Please don't use Google Translate. It will just translate words and you will sound more foolish. And please, take my advice, because we did that and, we started sounding foolish and appearing so foolish. We had people coming and telling us that, what is it that you have written? It doesn't make any sense. So don't use Google Translate or any of those translate plugins. Get a translator to do it. So likewise, things like, this is what I call localizing for an international market. So whether you're doing business, let's say in Japan, you need to have your website in Japanese. You don't change your entire website, but you have what you call translation ability, or you have put up a little small flag of Japan, and a person can click there and see it. So things like that, which you need to do, and then of course that is giving you some directions regarding how the website should be, etc., which I think you can go through it at your leisure, because these are just pointers what you should know when you are dealing with a website developer or a website designer. What is needed to be done. Then coming to, now if you see this is a horrible looking website. You don't feel like, and when you are doing too much of what, when it's not loading properly, when there is too many tabs, when there's too much of confusion, it's putting off. So your website has to look very clean, very crisp and efficient. So this is all a part about the visual articulation of the brand, how important it is to look good. So if you see, have a look at this, website, it looks clean, it looks neat. Messaging is, you feel like going ahead and exploring it rather than the earlier one where it was so very, very, crowded. Then this is the way your marketing material, where if you are going to be doing any business outside, please make sure that your marketing material has the language of the country that you intend to enter in, and have a nice, it can be, I would advise particularly nowadays, have hard copies as well. And the same thing can be put up on your website in a PDF format, but hard copies works nowadays. I mean, there's something which people do keep. And this is, of course, about knowing a little bit about your digital marketing and in terms of your content strategy, in terms of your keywords, what are the kind of keywords that people use to search for your products, etc., etc. So this is some pointers that I have just laid down. And then, this is our experience with international digital marketing. Is a person who is in, let's say, Japan, and he is doing a search, and you want Japanese customers. How will he come onto your website? So what you need to do for your website in order to be localized for Japan. So this is some pointers for that. And of course, database or direct marketing is about sending mailers. And I hope you all are doing that during this COVID, lockdown period, because a lot of mailing, it doesn't mean you have to send mails every day, at least once a week to your customers, not necessarily promoting your products, but, a lot of knowledge sharing that you can do, very generic knowledge sharing about your industry. And that works. Because everybody from your industry, your customers would like to know what's happening, what is new in your market, etc. So my advice is always at such times, people will get fed up if you are all the time sending mailers about product. Don't send them mailers about products all the time. You need to do more of knowledge sharing, which I call is seeding the need. So you sort of make your customer aware that there is this new thing which has come in and which I need to know, and so on and so forth. So, of course, participating in trade shows, that is something that we will do only after COVID, after the lockdown, but this becomes a part of your marketing strategy and international marketing strategy. That is when you are what you call going into overseas markets, so part in international trade shows. So this is... Sorry, Sanwa, do I discontinue? I mean, do I stop? Hello?
No, ma'am. Please continue.
Or should I continue? Okay. Now, I mean, there's a lot which I'll just quickly go through. Packaging and product design is something that, you all must pay attention to. If your product, how do you adapt your product to a foreign company? What is required to be done? Then even, like a very simple example is that the Big Mac never sold in India. Finally, they had to change it into a Maharaja Mac. That is indigenizing the design or indigenizing the product for that market. And I've given some examples also here, so if you see, packaging in terms of what needs to be done in terms of your labels, typefaces, images and patterns. Now, you'll find that certain countries, certain colors may not work because those colors have a very, very different connotation. And what are the colors that are needed? So, I've given some examples there, like what works in Netherlands, what doesn't work in China, etc., etc. So, this will be, I won't go through it in detail, but just briefly. And then, of course, was about, if you see here how they adapted things for the Chinese market. So my example here was just to know, if you're looking at your product, it should be adapted to that particular market. And if you have the time, I would suggest just get onto this site to see product design innovation. where you have a product designer designing a product. And I think everybody who is in this business of, let's say, if you all are manufacturing a product design is very, very important. As we know, and from your own experience, you know, you don't like to open up a bottle and go on turning and twisting the lid simply because the design was bad. And, you know, that's our everyday experience. And we say, "Arey, what is this Indian product? Very poor quality." It's all about just having a small, investment in doing a good design. That's it. So, you know, I've just sort of shared some examples here of design, and, you know, whenever you can go and have a look at it. And the greatest example of packaging design is what was done by Steve Jobs. Now, unfortunately, 5 o'clock, this is a story by itself about, you know, how Steve Jobs developed the packaging for all his products. You know, he used to spend a lot of time on packaging, and he had 2 people who used to make prototypes, and they used to be kept in a room, and they would keep on making prototypes after prototypes, and finally then even the sound, mind you. So you have, you know, and this is what comes into called sensory branding, where even a sound of your product is very, very important. You know, let's say you had a Harley Davidson, and if it just, when you kicked it and if it didn't have that room, you would say, "Oh, what a bike." That's a separate story altogether. It will be at some point of time, maybe I can talk about sensory branding, because that's very interesting. But it's about, hello, very, very interesting about how packaging creates the entire experience and a story. Now, this does not only mean it should be for B2C. It's very much for B2B. And, there are examples which, now here there is some information I've given about the iPhone packaging, but this is where your B2B comes. Look at the way the Walt packs up their stuff. Looks good, conveys confidence, has a lot of, and as customers, we love to open a good looking product, good looking package. If that package does not look good, we don't feel like, we don't have the confidence that it is such a good product. And I'm sure, you will also experience the same thing. Now, these were some examples, like what Kisan did. Very interesting. Of course, they have discontinued this bottle, but when shifted to this bottle design, they saved in transportation, package, logistics, easier to transport. And, the placement on the shelves was easier because they were able to place it at a slight angle rather than the glass bottle. So these were the things, what happens as a result of looking at packaging, so in terms of your logistic cost, breakages, etc. So that's another story altogether about tomato ketchup bottle design. It is a very interesting story of Heinz also, which maybe I will share with you some other time. So road shows, participate in road shows, that are organized by trade associations, business chambers, where, bring buyers and sellers together. For example, if you have found out that, okay, Japan is a place to where your product might find a market, go and become a member of the Indo-Japanese Chamber of Commerce immediately and start interacting with them. Go to the Japanese embassy in India. They have an economic and a business. They have a trade cell, and start interacting with them. Networking becomes very, very important for B2B particularly, because they are of very, very great help. And so this is where I'm talking about networking and public relations, which, so you have these various chambers of commerce, business France, trade agencies, Indo-German, just like you are members of MCCIA, you become members of those associations as well, and do a lot of networking. I mean, it's not just having a membership there. And another very important aspect of understanding international market, when you're going into the international market, is about their culture. what are their communication methods, what are the etiquettes, what is their hierarchy, etc. And there's a very interesting story. Let me just come back to this. How important Japanese people give to the business card. You will be surprised. And of course, unless some of you all have done business with Japanese, but that visiting card is very, very revered. And, I've given you an indication about what all they do and how it should not be kept badly. It should be kept properly. You can't put it into your pant pocket, but you should you should keep it on your table, etc., etc. Then you have all these things like the hierarchy, the bowing and handshakes. So if you're going to go into a Japanese market, always necessary to know about this. Mind you, this is also about it is you are not you are representing your company, so it is about your company image. You are the company's brand ambassador, and that becomes very, very important. And then, of course, I've given an example of Italians. For them, what is important? For them, they're very casual. They talk light. They're quite like us in many ways. So, it becomes easier to deal with Italy. Whereas in France, it's all about eating. So, they like to eat, and a lot of business is done over eating, and a lot of wine drinking and eating. If you're not a wine drinker, that's fine, but at least you must enjoy. The French business lunch is a ritual, just like the visiting card ritual of the Japanese. And of course, about language, very, very important. Don't use jargon which we use, English, and so on and so forth, because they will not understand. And always best to have somebody who knows the language with you. And coming to very most important, and this is where I find we make a lot of mistakes, is to understand when are their holidays, when do they do business. And because I remember, I was slated to go to Europe. This was about 2-3 years ago, and invariably we booked our tickets and all in the month of June. And June to September, the entire Europe is closed. June, July, and they take their holidays very, very seriously. I mean, there is no work that gets done, and particularly in markets like Japan. I'm sorry, in France and Germany and all, nothing gets done. So don't even plan it. So, and keep in mind, of course, all your holidays and their day holidays, etc., etc. So these were some of the tips which I thought I would probably share with you. And now the next part of all is strategy, which I will share with you through the PPT. I will not talk about it because it's too much of a lot of written matter which you will need to go through. And you can go through. And if you have any questions, you can always get in touch with me, and I can always help you out with it. Okay, I hope I have been able to do justice to the topic, and I hope you have enjoyed what I have said and was of interest to you, and most important, it should help you out in your business.
Madam, my suggestion will be just spend a few minutes on this particular slide.
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so now, this is hardcore strategy, which is very important in the sense is if you want to go international, first is identifying where you want to go. Now, you cannot just make an arbitrary decision, but make a study of the place that you're going to go to. You may have an idea that is where, it's like, let me give you an example. A company that approached us and said, okay, I think there is a business for us, which is good. Turkey seems to be a good country to go to. Now, what is the assessment? What is the country in terms of its political? What is its economy? How is its economy? What are its tariffs? What are its social? How is the society structured? So there has to be a thorough study, which has to be done about that country which you want to go to. I explained it there in my slide, where you have to do a SWOT analysis. First, do a SWOT analysis of your own company, whether you are ready. whether you are ready to go across. And in there, if you do the SWOT analysis and you find out, my company, I am ready to go, only then you take the step to go to the next stage, which is to do a study about the country which you want to enter. Now, largely speaking, is that in terms of understanding all the trade, the tariff, the kind of political structure, the kind of stability that the government has, etc., etc. In today's uncertain times, it will be very necessary to know. And of course, if you take in these 4 points, sorry, I'll just go back. Doing a SWOT analysis first is of your own company, whether you have a product which is ready for that market, and company wise, do you have the strength? That means in terms of HR, in terms of money, in terms of your marketing, in terms of branding, to make that jump. So it's all fine thinking about going to that, but internally you have to be very, very strong and ready. So basically company readiness and whether your product is ready. Then comes in the next, which markets to enter, then doing a study, thorough study about the market. And in the following slides, I have also given the information as to what you need to know about those markets. And of course, how to enter markets, which means that identifying the size, what is the market share there you are probably likely to project for yourself, who are your competitors, what kind of distribution channel, what kind of pricing, all that needs to be. So there's a marketing, complete understanding of the market. And of course, finally comes the marketing strategy, which is how are you going to reach out to those customers there? It's all easy going there, but what is it that is required to do? And this cannot take a very long time. It takes you about 2-3 years. No, you need to give yourself a minimum of 8 months to, once you have decided to go into the market, you do the study, you land up there in that market, and then you start, and within the 8 months, you must start doing business. So this would be very, very important to know. And if you, my next slide gives you an idea as to, sorry. Now, these are the reasons for failure. And of course, I've also given, what works very successfully, what you need to have, etc., which will work very well. And here is a framework in the sense you do what I call it's not what I call, but what is known as the PEST analysis, is the political, economic, social, technology analysis. Then there is the SWOT analysis, customer analysis, and so on and so forth. So the slides there will be of great help. And if you have any questions, you can always, come back to me and get a clarification. So, Dharma, is that enough, or you want me to explain more?
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. Maybe you can just browse through, and then what we'll do is we'll share this presentation later on.
I think, yes. Yeah? Because here there is a lot of, a little bit of more of reading that they will, that everybody will need to do, and, rather than me going and explaining every point.
On the slide before this. The PEST slide.
First one?
Yeah, this one. Just let everybody comprehend this slide, then we can probably go into the question answers.
Yeah. So I don't know what those arrows have suddenly appeared up, by the way.
Yeah, it's okay.
So should you want me to talk about this slide more?
Yeah, so yeah, maybe this one and then we close. Yes, sure.
All right. So here it's just sort of, this whole framework is just to get an idea as to how the thought, the entire strategy should be worked out. One is, of course, you always have an external analysis and an internal analysis. External will be all about the outside factors of the markets that you want to enter. The PEST analysis there, then the threats and the opportunities, the barriers that you are going to be facing Uh, so summarizing all this, and this should be in a form of a document. Please make sure that you all make it into a document. Somebody does it. Maybe your marketing guys can do it. You can do it, whatever it is. And of course, the internal analysis is about the company and the strengths and the weaknesses. Because maybe you might decide to go, but you suddenly find that you are falling short of, your product is not ready, or your distribution, or sorry, not distribution, but you don't have enough people to go. You need people to also go and man there, be there. Perhaps you'll appoint somebody there, but somebody has to then monitor that from here. So there will have to be resource allocation done by the company. It cannot be just left. So very important, these two: external analysis, internal analysis, and of course your customers. Yes, you have to know where are they going to be, what is going to be, what kind of a customer it is, customer segments, who are your, where are they located, etc.
So, madam, there are a couple of people who are asking what is the pest analysis.
Next is political analysis, like what is the polity of that particular country, economic stability, what kind of economic policies. Then is the social, what is the social structure, and what is the technology. So it is normally, this is called pest analysis, or the pestle. LE is legal and E is environmental, but we normally call it pest analysis. It helps you to just sort of kind of put all the information in a very structured format by saying, okay, politically, this is what, let's say if you have to look at India, you will say, okay, the political ideology of this particular government is more right than left, etc., etc. And economic, of course, we are, very, very liberal policies, etc. Social structure, we are a diverse country. Technology, we are fairly good. So this is the way in which you will sort of identify these various aspects. So you have an understanding, because see, if you're going to be going into a market which is, let's say if you want to go and do business in China, there is such a fear that China is what you call, it is not a democratic country. So there's always that one big question mark that tomorrow, let's say there will be a change. Democratic countries are always very easy to do business with, etc., etc. And so, it means that there is a certain amount of, involved. There is going to be what you call a better chance for businesses to flourish and trade, etc., etc. I will just give you an example. It doesn't have to be the same.
Okay. So I think we'll go into the question answer more now. So there are a few questions. I'll start from the B2B branding part of it.
Sure.
So there is a question about about B2B services. What percentage of expenditure should be allocated to branding? And there is a question about B2B branding for products. For B2B products, how should the branding be done effectively?
All right. Now, coming to the first question, as far as your expenditure is concerned, how much of money you should keep aside for branding. Now, I would put it as marketing and branding. Normally, it is always a certain percentage of your final sales. That is the way traditionally you think. Now, suppose say you're starting off, we don't go full on into it. You go into a step by step. But my advice would be there has to be a certain amount, let's say about 10% kept aside purely for marketing. Normally in bigger companies, they keep about 15% of their total sales aside for marketing and marketing activities. And branding is regarded as a part of it. But if you're starting off, then, there is no history to this thing with, it would be like, let's say, okay, this is going to cost so much. You've taken a basic ground view of what is going to be required and make an estimate. Here you will need the help of, let's say, your marketing team in order to suggest what should be the monies to be kept aside. Let's say, for example, if you are done nothing as far as marketing is concerned, making a website, then getting your logo done, getting your packaging done, etc., etc. So it also depends on what all is going to be involved in it. But ideally speaking, if you have already started off, then keep about 10% aside for your marketing activities.
Okay.
And now the second question is about B2B products. Now, traditionally, there has been the trend of doing what is called alphanumeric branding. So there is a certain name and you say A104. Now, that is a name which has been thought of for products. I'm talking about B2B, purely because it is being easy inside for your inventory and so on and so forth. Ideally speaking, if you are able to develop a certain kind of a name, now that name will depend entirely upon what your product is and so on and so forth. So, but my advice is always that you should have some sort of a name to begin with. It could be a very simple name. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but it has what you call.
We'll wait for her link to get stabilized.
Remember it, and then you have variants. Sorry.
Maybe you'll have to repeat it for the last one odd minute because your link was unstable, so we couldn't hear.
Now is it all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So my answer to it is that if you having let's say B2B, if you have a range of products or product, what is the name? If you are giving the product a name of your company itself, then you can do it that way also, but you should give it some sort of an identity. It should have its own identity. It's just like the examples I showed you. Now, in case if you don't want to do it that way, if you don't want to give your company name, if you want to give your product a completely different name, that is also is fine, because that it means it's getting an identity. Then what happens? It becomes easier when it has an identity of itself. And it's just an example of Infosys and Finacle. I mean, Finacle is the name that they gave to their product. And everybody talks about it as Finacle. They don't call it Infosys software. They call it Finacle. So you can give it a name. It's like the Kirloskar Jensen, where they call it that Chota Chili or something of that sort. So depending upon who your customer is, what is the product, my advice will be always to give a name to it. And that's how branding starts.
Okay. So there are questions about capital goods industry, the engineering capital goods industry.
Yes.
What should their marketing strategy or branding exercise be? And also there is one question about what could be the emerging opportunities for Indian companies, particularly the SMEs.
Sorry, I can't hear you, Sudanva.
Sorry, there is one question about engineering capital equipment. How
Yes.
should the branding exercise be?
Yes.
And there is another question whether in the present scenario can be as Indian SMEs, particularly from the ancillary or the say, tier 1 categories or tier 2 categories, for example, whether our Indian engineering SMEs would be able to command slight bit of premium when the world is in a slight shambles.
But to command the premium, you have to brand. Otherwise, it will be, you're competing with a whole lot of others. Then that's why branding becomes very important, where you are able to command a premium, and that is one of the biggest benefits of branding. Because the moment you brand, nobody's going to question you if you are going to be a little more priced. Okay, coming to the first question, which is about capital industry, capital engineering. Yes, it's very important to do what is called corporate branding. That is the name of your company. And that is where, if you see a lot of other companies in the similar space, they build up a very strong company brand. And it's not just only for their customers, but it is also largely for their stakeholders. That means their vendors, their suppliers, their employees, and so on and so forth. And undoubtedly, to be known in the in the industry. Now, if the company is planning to go public, then it becomes all the more important for it to be known and subsequently invest in branding. And that is an absolute, I mean, it is beyond doubt that the company needs to invest in branding. So
Right.
that was about engineering, capital engineering. Yeah.
So then there are questions about the markets in US, China, and Africa.
Yes.
Could there be an increased focus, or could our companies grab a little bit of opportunities on a on a holistic pattern? Of course, individual branding, individual marketing strategy, product
Yes.
differentiation, all that will be required. But as a country, as a nation, do we stand to gain from all this turmoil that's happening around the world?
I think, of course, we will have to, and that is what the government is extremely busy doing at the moment. And I think there are talks of a lot of one is, of course, Indian companies going out. That will take a little time till the till the Europe and US settle down. But there are going to be opportunities opening up. I think they will want to do business with India. Simply because we are better off in terms of, let's say, values, culture, and so on and so forth. And I am very confident that there is going to be a lot of opportunity for India. And yes, Africa and all, now these are countries where we have not explored. We will have to explore them depending upon what their growth curve is. But no doubt, countries like Ethiopia and you have Sierra Leone and Gabon and all these places where we can definitely go and look out for opportunities. Now, some of the even looking now at the various trends of let's say consumers. Suddenly you have now the auto industry, which is almost what you call flying, simply because the fact that the EV is going to come about now. For, let's say, if EV happens, EV is not just going to be in India, but there's going to be a lot of what you call opportunities in the African countries where there can be what you call supply. You can set up markets, you can supply product components for those markets as well. So I am very what you call optimistic about post-COVID in these countries. So, Tanmay, any more questions?
Yeah, I think there are questions about the startups and the SMEs. How should
Yes.
they be go?
Now, as far as startups is concerned, my advice to them is always, what is the name that they are going to be choosing? And of course, very importantly is that every startup will they no doubt, depending upon one is the name, then of course is the kind of investment that they make in communications. Well, if they have an what you call an product that really does do well, then automatically the the spotlight comes onto it, like what happened with My Labs. But one of the things that startup need to do is to get all the other things in place, like for example their website, whether they are writing articles, whether they are blogging, whether they are sharing stories, and there are dime a dozen platforms to do that. Online, and where there are so many of these startup portals where they're writing stories about various new ventures and so on and so forth. But what happens here? Every startup has to have a very customized strategy, which means depending upon the product and so on and so forth. So, in a very general way, I would say that. You need to focus on a lot of blogging, then writing articles and submitting it to a lot of the trade magazines, the portals, and so on and so forth. That is how you'll be able to create awareness. And there's no doubt about the networking part of it.
Okay. Any last minute question in case somebody wants to put it? Otherwise, we'll thank everyone. And as is customary, well, what we'll do is we'll request everybody to put on their videos, and then we can have a group picture.
Okay, somebody's asking whether LinkedIn marketing effective. Yes, yes, it is very useful. So both Instagram and LinkedIn on chat.
Yes, yes. So I think each segment, each product, each company, and maybe each market also has its own peculiarities when you talk about social media, whether it is LinkedIn or Instagram, or can be in terms of the product or a technology company, the customer segment that you are catering to, and all that. So, okay, any other questions? Okay, just for the consumption of everybody, we will we have requested Madam to give the presentation, and she has kindly agreed to do this. One, she has also kindly agreed to share the recording of the session. So once we spruce up that, we will put it up on our social media, and we will share it with everybody. Maybe also one email that would go. So our team will try and put everything together and send it out. So okay, the last one that I think Chetna seems to have put: B2B business. What PR methods can be put while entering in international markets?
Sorry, what marketing methods?
What PR methods can be used when entering international markets?
Well, depending upon which is the market that we are entering, now PR, which means it doesn't mean hiring a PR agency and so on and so forth. The public relations acquires a slightly different context. What you need to do is to create awareness about your product, your company or product digitally first, because that's where everybody is going to. Writing in or getting in touch with a lot of the trade magazines is very, very important. So now, when you say public relations, if you talk about, public relations in a very generic manner means that you are interacting with the embassy, you're interacting your relations with the embassy, your relations with the trade chambers, your relationship with what you call the various state chambers there, etc., etc. So that is a very different cup of tea altogether. And of course, it will be very difficult for me to, explain everything in such a short time. But, these are all will have to be customized. But, at a very generic level, if you go through my PPTs, you'll find an answer there for a lot of your queries.
Sure. Okay, is there any more question that kind of remains unanswered apart from what has been covered by Madam so far? Okay, what we'll do is we will request her to put her email ID into her presentation. So if anybody has any questions later on, also she can do it. She has been part of our Exim Facilitation Center, and she has been guiding a lot of our SME entrepreneurs as a pro bono activities, like initial inputs for marketing strategy, etc., etc. So with this, if our team Madhura and Amol, Shaunak, Satwisha are ready, we can have a quick group picture. And before that, I'd like to thank Madam and all of you for making this session very, very interesting.
I'd like to thank MCCIA for having organized this and given an opportunity. And I hope my whatever I had to share, knowledge that I had to share has been of use.
Excellent.